Hey folks, I'm here at the IAA Mobility 2025, also known as the Munich Motor Show. I'm here standing at the Odeonsplatz, which is part of the IAA Mobility open space. In about a few hours, I'll be heading back to Beijing, China. I've been here since the 7th. Today is the 12th, so I've been in Munich for 5 days, attending this year's Munich Motor Show. And what I'm trying to do is recap some of the biggest highlights and the most memorable moments that I've seen and experienced. It's not going to be an exhaustive review of everything that I did. It's impossible, but it was definitely a full 5-day experience. And I'll just say this, leaving the IAA Summit, which is the indoor exhibition area, the last thing I saw was at the BMW Group stand, their employees dancing to the tune of "It Feels Good." And I think "It Feels Good" is the perfect way to summarize this year's IAA Mobility. It was definitely a collision course between the Germans or the Europeans in a larger context with the Chinese, and not only the OEMs, but the tier ones, the tech companies, battery suppliers, ADAS smartification, ADAS driving companies, LiDAR companies. I don't think I've seen such a collision course in any auto shows before. And obviously we know that this is the home court of the Germans and the Europeans to a larger extent, and the Chinese are coming. And we think about the Chinese market, the foreigners have been in China led by Volkswagen, who's been there 40 years, and they're facing some headwinds. They're trying to transition over to electrification, smartification. And the last few years, the Chinese has led the way. And now the Chinese have brought their latest and the greatest into Germany and Europe, as evidenced by many announcements of new products, announcements of entry, announcements of the establishment of local regional headquarters or R&D centers, the hiring of local talent, the announcements of collaborations. Prime examples, Valeo and Momenta, Qualcomm and QCraft. So much has happened, and I'm going back to that feel good for the German big three, Volkswagen Group, Mercedes and BMW Group. Obviously, they had their fresh lineup representing their next generation of products. The Mercedes all-electric GLC, the BMW Neue Klasse iX3, the Volkswagen brands foursome, right? The electric urban car family. Some of the other brands, Audi, Porsche 911 Turbo S, Audi Concept C, which gave a preview of where they're going in terms of Audi, and it's completely different from the current lineup. Skoda, Cupra, I think we got a taste of kind of the brand feel of each of these brands. And then obviously Scout Motors, which is interesting. The Volkswagen Group night on the 7th, when I arrived, I missed it because my plane came in late because of weather issues, and my luggage did not come until 3 days later, but that's another story. But I think the Volkswagen Group night event or afternoon event really had nothing to do with China, but everything to do with China, all at the same time, because those electric urban car families, obviously they're going to be facing competition from the Chinese. Porsche is facing some difficulties financially. Every brand in the Volkswagen Group, I think Oliver Blume, he's under pressure to maybe give up the CEO role of Porsche. And then when Scout talked about this range extended Terra pickup, couldn't help but think about what has been going on in the Chinese market, which is the e-revs and the plug-in hybrids have really been driving the market for some of the larger SUVs. Although that should be changing, because we've seen recent launches of these newer, fully electric, large three-row SUVs that some of these players think will replace the trend of these plug-in and e-revs dominating the market. So, and then obviously the BMW Neue Klasse was revealed on September 5th, a few days before the show, and that really represents the next maybe at least a decade where BMW Group is going to have their entire lineup refreshed with the panoramic iDrive, a smart cockpit, which in my mind among the German Premium 3, currently I've experienced it 3 times at CES, at Shanghai Auto Show, here. I think it's still the best. I also saw the MBX Hyperscreen for the Mercedes-Benz right over there at the residence in this square here, Odeonsplatz Square. I think there's still some bugs, but the iDrive seem to be working better. I felt like the German automakers together represented their next generation products, and I felt some confidence, although if it's at least short-lived maybe during this motor show, because Mercedes, I mean, last night they had a little party going on, the night version of their welcome home stand. Party music was blasting, and it felt good. And BMW Group, as I mentioned, they had their feel-good music pumping at their stand with the employees jumping around in square dancing, right? There's a lot of confidence going into next year, which is really the delivery year for all of these German brands, especially in China and the rest of the world. But critically in China, all of these, GLC, Mercedes, the iX3, they're going to have their localized Chinese versions starting production and launching next year in China with local solutions. Prime example is BMW working with Momenta, Huawei, Alibaba. They are embracing these Chinese tech ecosystem partners in order to be successful. And at the World New Energy Conference, IAA Mobility edition that was held a couple of days ago, it was pretty jarring to see all 3 CEOs of the German automakers actually listening in on one of the executives who, from Li Auto, talk about Li Auto's AI and their large model IAA R&D initiative. And this guy was talking about how fast they develop these technologies. And it was really jarring to see all 3 German CEOs, automaker CEOs, watching this new startup who's only 10 years old, 100-year-old companies. Li Auto is going to set up their German R&D center or European R&D center right here in Munich soon. As I mentioned, that many of these Chinese players are doing so, and they announced that. And then going over to the Chinese themselves, I think we saw the entire ecosystem leaders present here at the IAA Mobility. You talk about CATL, Gotion, Eve Energy, which is supplying the cylindrical batteries at the Hungarian plant for the BMW Neue Klasse 6th generation drivetrain. Calb, the LiDAR players, Hesai, RoboSense, Xi'an. I mean, Hesai, they unveiled a 800 line LiDAR with a 400-meter detection range at 10% reflectivity, which they think is going to be the one that gets over the hurdle to popularize or commercialize level 3 and level 4 autonomous driving. And then quite a few chip SoC manufacturers and domain controllers, say SV, #1 a domain controller for smart cockpit, smart driving, as well as infotainment in China and globally. And they're hiring more European talent for their global ambitions. Black Sesame, I mean, this VP I talked to, he said, 2023 they were here just to present their brand. This year, they're here to do business. BYD, we can't, talk about IAA Mobility without talking about the 8,000-pound gorilla. I mean, BYD, they only announced one launch, the CO6 DMI Touring at about 43,000 euros. Not cheap, much more expensive than the Chinese market. But I think what was interesting that Stella announced is quite a few other initiatives. For example, they're rolling out the megawatt flash charging, which I think you can charge like 400 kilometers in under 10 minutes. They've expanded to 32 markets, not in the world, but in Europe alone. They're announcing certified pre-owned cars. What was interesting at the WNEV conference, it was interesting to hear the 3 German automaker CEOs speak. And Ola Kalinius, he mentioned that Stella in one of the interviews said there's 130 car brands in China and 100 needs to go. And he said, we hope we'll be one of those 30 that survive in the Chinese market. And he was really serious about really the success of these German automakers really depends on the success of China. They have to get their products and market right through the collaboration of the Chinese tech ecosystem. Momenta is probably one of the stars of this year's show because before the show they announced they'll roll out their first robotaxi in collaboration with Uber starting in 2026. I'm thinking early next year. Horizon Robotics is another star of the show that obviously is working with Volkswagen. They have a joint venture. They have a joint venture with Automobile, formerly Continental Automotive. And the ADAS, they're working with several other tier 1 suppliers, Bosch and Denso, to have tailored solutions for their customers. Horizon, I mean, I was at a roundtable at the Volkswagen Group booth, and the founder and CEO of Horizon Robotics, Dr. Yu Kai, he basically said, you know, how you kind of catch up and you embrace the Chinese automotive trend in China is really you have to do two things. You must believe in a vision and you must act to have that China speed. And he mentioned that over the last decade, the computing power has increased 1,000 times in the car, and the cost of LiDAR has been reduced by 1,000 times. It's really incredible, and he believes within 3 to 5 years, perhaps by the end of this decade, that there will be level 4 autonomous driving, eyes off. He said there will be eyes off autonomous driving available in China, and Horizon Robotics obviously is a huge player in the industry. They just delivered their 10 millionth chip. They're only a 10-year-old company. They're the star, right? And they're launching this HSD on the Cherry model in November, which has really smooth, smart assisted driving, or ADAS, or sometimes the industry now calls it level 2++. And speaking of level 2++, the most memorable experience for me, I might be the only one that have really test-ridden solutions from 4 Chinese companies on the streets of Munich. Momenta, Neue HCT, which is a joint venture between Horizon Robotics and Automobile. Zhuoyu, which supplies Volkswagen ICE models in the Chinese market, and some other brands with their ADAS solutions. Zhuoyu is a spin-off of DJI. And then last but not least, Bosch and WeRide. Obviously, I do have a ranking of who's better than the other ones, but really it's very difficult to tell the difference that, let's say, one is much better than the other. No, they're all pretty good, although I do have a rank, which I won't say here, but I'll post some videos of my test ride experience. But just think about these solutions that have been recently launched in China, and it took their local development team just a few weeks or few months to localize these systems and for them to be operated on Munich streets, urban highway conditions is incredible. What I heard speaking to one of the Bosch engineers who was on a driver's seat was many of their customers who's test-ridden the solutions, they had only one thing to say: this was human-like. And even on one of the test drives, I felt like when the driver took over, it was more jerky than when the system was on. That's how good the system had been. And I think that the ADAS, one of the probably a consensus, not only from the Chinese companies, but even the German automakers, they were on the record saying that the ADAS is coming. These capabilities are coming. And also the smart cockpit, as we've seen from the iDrive and the MBUX Hyperscreen, it's also their bet. In China, they'll have their versions. And also the other part for me, I think I met so many old friends in the industry. Obviously, they've changed their jobs. They probably went from customer to supplier or supplier to customer. They went from PR to media or media to PR. And I met quite a few I met many more new people. I mean, speaking of, this Chinese off-road brand 212 is launching in Europe, right? They're launching their gasoline and diesel, kind of the Jeep-like off-road vehicle, which is actually quite premium inside. And they're kind of the simple G-class, if you will, of Chinese, but they call themselves the Chinese off-road originated from 212. GAC Group launched a couple of their Ion smaller models. Chang'an, it was really, speaking of Chang'an, based in Chongqing, they brought this famous KOL called Chongqing Trump. I'm sure many of you have seen his videos, and they brought him over to do some videos with Chang'an. One of the jarring picture that's worth 1,000 words is one of the executives of Chang'an doing a press conference was showing a PPT which showed on the left side Chongqing, China, a picture of the bird's eye view of Chongqing, China. On the right side, bird's eye view of Munich, Germany. I thought that was a very impactful picture of really the China and Germany both competing but also coming together, and while Chang'an using the platform to launch the Deepal SO5. And it was jarring also to see Claudio Ciora, the former head of design for Volkswagen Group, now head of design for Chang'an, announcing the pricing of the Shenlan SO5 at the press conference. It almost feels like one of those live streams of Chinese brands, smart EV brands launching new products in China. You know how it is when at the very end, slides, the prices drop and it's like boom, oh, they're launching at this price. Ito, the other Chongqing company, came last time as Ceres, but now they're coming at Ito, and their first plan is to launch in Middle East, and then gradually they'll think about launching in the European market. But obviously Ito is a Huawei-backed company that's going to be a bit sensitive on how they launch their products in Europe. Leap Motor, right? Leap Motor launched their Lafa 5, kind of the hatchback, A-segment compact hatchback, along with the B10, which is priced starting at below 30,000 euros. Obviously, Leap Motor has expanded really rapidly through the help with their Western partner, Stellantis, which has a 20% stake. So they have the benefit of having a large European partner. And there's obviously other ones. Dongfeng Forthing, right, launched a couple of their models. I'm sure I'm going to miss quite a few companies, but I spoke to Qcraft, how they're rapidly developing their solutions, and that's going on to more and more vehicles. Bosch and WeRide is going to launch their version of the ADAS end-to-end in the Cherry model. The HSD, Horizon Robotics HSD, is going to be launching in the Cherry XC model. And then Firefly, there was a Firefly on the booth at Horizon Robotics because they use one of their J6 chips, iterations of the J6 chips. And speaking of Firefly, there was another event at the NEO Hub where that had the title of Art of Innovation, which they invited Danilo, the chief principal engineer of NEO and their number 44 employee, along with CEO of Clear Motion, which currently provides the active suspension CM1 for the NEO ET9. They had an event called Art of Innovation, and it was really interesting to see some of the back histories of how these two companies came together and worked on this feature that's really an important comfort feature for the ET9, the active suspension. And they showed a live demo. The CEO of Clear Motion, Christian, he talked about the early history of the company and how they reached the deal with and worked on the deal during the later part of the pandemic in 2022. And now seeing this on the vehicles. Obviously, they have to make this more mass appeal, not only on premium vehicles. Can we see this on Envo and possibly on Firefly? We don't know, but it was pretty cool to attend that event and really listen in on and seeing the demo of how the system actually works. I think, and I've walked the show, every day from the 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, talked to so many people, new and old, and really the experiences of these smart driving solutions on the streets of Munich, these I will take home with me and really the thing I wanted to say about the Chinese brands coming, there's no doubt that they're coming. If you still think they're just here to show a brand or just show a car and launch a car, they're coming. They're going to continue to come regardless what happens with the tariff. And speaking of tariff, nobody talked about the tariff this year. I think collaboration, a stability of the future goals of the industry, I think that was talked about. Collaboration, looking for that ecosystem. And now, speaking of the Chinese are coming, I think it will feel good now this time that after speaking to some of these players, let's say SV, they've come to an understanding that they also cannot be here alone. And they, with their customers, their downstream customers coming to Europe, they need to have the local European partner ecosystem solution to help them adhere or be compliant in terms of the regulatory environment, legal environment, cybersecurity, data, safety. I don't think it's a given. Just like it's not a given for the foreign premium or for the foreign legacies to find their mojo back. I think at the same time, this path going forward for both the Europeans, tier ones, I mean, we've heard about tier ones. We heard about ZF. The CEO was let go yesterday after I was listening to him, Holger Klein, speaking the previous day before, because ZF has been one of the most severely impacted foreign tier one suppliers, European tier one suppliers. And everyone facing difficult situations, and they have to, during all of this, they had to continue to make the transition, work with the Chinese players. At the same time, the Chinese players will depend on them. So I think this was the integration of China, Europe, China, Germany was on full display. The CEOs, the exchanges, I've never seen, I think there was 116 companies exhibiting, quite a lot more than last time, and they're really serious about being local companies, localized, and really making a presence, but that will continue to take some time. I saw a couple of Xiaomi's on the side of the streets. I think there was an importer that brought them in, preparing for the launch before 2027. But they'll be here, right? By next IAA Mobility 2027, we will see a lot more presence as well as a lot more establishment, maybe perhaps dedicated European developed products specifically for the European market. Linktor, right? This reminds me of Linktor, which along with the 212 is under a company called Shandong Weiqiao Group. They launched their kind of the Tumi Elite, kind of the two-seater smart-alike EVs with just over 100 kilometers range, I think 180 kilometers range, very small battery for urban solutions in European cities, dedicated to the European market, not available in China. And then there's this company, Pix, which runs autonomous driving, kind of the robotaxi vans in certain parts of China, in Guizhou, in Shenzhen. And there's a bunch of others I have not mentioned, smaller companies in the mobility ecosystem here to do business, to talk to potential clients and customers. So this was a lot of information to be processed. I still have to look at a lot of the videos and the pictures that I've taken, but that was the quick summary of this year's IAA Mobility. Really, it feels good. It's a feel good for everyone in the sense that they understand where they need to go. They understand where they're doing well. They understand who they need to work with. They understand what's in place that requires them to do things differently. So that's my summary, and I will see you in 2 years.